Well everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the Google Pixel 6 Pro and see how this particular phone holds up in 2024. Now, the thing with the Google Pixel 6 Pro, in my opinion, is that it's still like a pretty good phone. It's still a very good phone for the most part, and I think Google did a really good job with this device back in 2024. I think this thing still has a lot of capability and a lot of quality, and if you're in the market, you can't really go wrong with something like the Pixel 6 Pro, but keep in mind a few things. You are still getting a much better phone, in my opinion, in every single way on something like the Pixel 8 Pro versus something like the Pixel 6 Pro. Even the 7 Pro is better. So just kind of keep that in mind. I would hate to recommend a phone to people that, there's already such a better successor. So keep that in mind, but regardless, still a very good phone in this thing. If you want to pick up this phone or some other phones I would recommend buying this year, links will be down in the description. You can get that from there and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the Google Pixel 6 Pro, we are getting that 6.7-inch LTPO AMOLED display. It's a 1440p panel, 120Hz, and by far, it's probably one of the better panels, Google's ever made. It looks very good. And the thing with this type of device is that it's a hole punch display, fingerprint sensor in the display, curved glass at that as well. It's a very beautiful panel. And still, whenever I go ahead and look at this phone, I'm always so happy because, Google just knocked it out of the park with this type of device. And still to this day, it looks very good and it just gets a thumbs up from me. When I compare this panel against the Pixel 8 Pro, I still like this panel a lot because of that curved glass, and it makes it look very beautiful. It's like one of my favorite things going on for this phone. But as I mentioned, just kind of keep in mind that you're almost always better off getting them, most expensive, the better phone of the year. But regardless, still a very good phone on this thing, and I'm a big fan of the way this phone looks on the front side. Now on the bottom, you're getting USB Type-C, no other ports or anything like that, which is totally fine. For a phone like this of this day and age, it kind of makes sense. On the backside, we're getting our standard glass back, which is a little bit different than our frosted glass backs we usually get, but still a standard glass back is totally fine, and I'm still a massive fan of the glass backs on these types of phones that these kind of phones have. Getting a triple camera setup at that as well, wireless charging and reverse wireless charging on this phone, and IP certification. This is still a very good phone that I'm a massive fan of. The thing you have to keep in mind with the Google Pixel 6 Pro was that this was actually the first Pro model phone that Google made. They used to have their XL models and they had their Nexus phones for a long time, but this was the first Pixel Pro that we ever had, and I'm still a big fan of these types of devices. I think Google did a tremendous job with this type of device, and although it's not perfect and it did have some problems when it first came out, I'm still a big fan of the way this phone is approached in the last couple of years. So without a doubt, definitely gets a thumbs up for me. Now in terms of the price point of this phone has gone down in price quite a bit since it first came out. So if you were in the market and you wanted to go ahead and buy a brand new phone, this thing doesn't cost as much as it used to cost. So that's a big thing to keep in mind there too, because if you're wanting to go ahead and buy a phone, well, this thing is not going to cost as much as it used to. So this thing has gone down. It's had 2 successors of this phone come out since then. So that's a very good thing, because when you're getting this type of device, it's not going to be at its $1,000 price that it was before, $899. It's going to cost substantially less than that, which is a very good thing to keep in mind there too. So that right there gets a thumbs up for me as well. Now from the camera side of things, this phone is a very good phone as well. 15 megapixel wide angle lens, 48 megapixel telephoto lens, then a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera. Then it's also giving you an 11.1 megapixel ultra wide camera on the front. I will tell you, very good camera for the most part. Now you're getting 4K at 60 on the back and 4K at 30 on the front. The only slight things that kind of rub me off a little bit wrong with this camera, it did come out in 2021, so it's not the biggest deal in the world, but no 4K at 60. That's very weird. I feel like they could have easily thrown in 4K at 60 on this phone. So not having that type of capability right there was very weird. And I do feel like Google could have done something like that. If anybody could have done it, it would probably have been Google. And I was very weirded out the fact that they didn't even give us that type of capability at that time. And also no 8K capability on the back. I still feel like that's very weird, but it's totally okay. A lot of phones, it's just kind of what happens when you're getting these types of devices. So I think it's totally okay. I totally get it. But for the most part, for a lot of things you're going to do with this type of camera, you're going to get a solid experience. I feel like this type of lens and this type of camera for the most part, realistically speaking, no matter what you're going to do with it, you're probably going to have a pretty decent time. And that's something that I actually like a lot about these phones, because you don't really have to go through and pick up the most expensive phone to have a decent camera. And this thing is giving you a pretty good camera for the most part, which is something that's actually really cool from this type of device. So I, for one, I'm a massive fan of this type of lens. You know, I'm a good fan of this lens. I don't want to say I'm the biggest fan of all time, but it's a good camera. It gets the job done for the most part. And I would tell you, if you're going to go ahead and buy a phone, this is a pretty decent option. Do keep in mind that in some other devices, like on some other, like if you're going to go ahead and buy a phone, you might not get the craziest experience on this one compared to some other devices. But I do think this thing kind of gets the job done for the most part. There's not really an insane amount of things to complain about. And I do think if you're going to go ahead and buy a phone, it's a decent camera. Software-wise, Google just does a really good job with software. They've now since improved their software longevity even more with the Google Pixel 8, but with the Google Pixel, 6 Pro, this thing is still giving you quite a bit of software on this type of device, which is very cool. We're now on Android 14. We're going to be getting Android 15 later this year, and I do think that with this type of device, once again, you are getting a very good performing device from the software standpoint. This phone is going to last for a long period of time. You're really not missing out on anything right now, and once again, that's a very good thing going on for this particular device. If I were to go ahead and basically buy a phone, I would want a phone that's still supported with software and or it's going to be supported with software for a long period of time, and that's essentially what's going on with this type of device. So personally for me, like I said, I'm a big fan of this type of software, and although it's not going to be lasting as long as the Pixel 8 Pro, it's still going to be lasting for quite a bit of time. So I, for one, like I said before, I'm a fan of this software. It gets a thumbs up for me, and I hope this phone lasts forever. This phone could end up lasting, maybe another 2 years. So keep that in mind, but that's still a very good thing going on for this particular device as well. So that kind of covers it up there. Now, in terms of the performance of this phone, this was a very interesting thing about this device. This phone got released with the Google Tensor 1 chipset, so the first generation of the Google Tensor chipset, and it came with 12 gigabytes of RAM. Now, the thing with this phone, and the reason why I liked this phone a lot at that time, was because of the amount of RAM that it actually brought within it. Having that type of RAM in this type of device was actually very cool. 12 gigabytes of RAM is a massive amount of RAM to have, which is very awesome. And with this type of device, you're still getting a very good performing phone for the most part. Now, I will say the Tensor chipset has been optimized quite a bit with software improvements, but also with a lot of applications kind of taking advantage of the software that we've kind of gotten. So that was something that was genuinely very cool. So that was something that made me very happy, because when you're buying something like the Google Pixel 6 Pro, you're buying a phone that's going to be giving you a very good performing phone for the most part. And it's an in-house chipset that Google made. I think when it first came out, I wasn't the biggest fan of it, but since I've actually been using it and everything, it's been getting better. I still think Snapdragon is a better chipset. I feel like Google should go back to Snapdragon, but I guess Tensor gets the job done. And if it allows them to support our phones for a longer period of time, then go for it. But that's just one thing to keep in mind. But I'm still a fan of the Tensor 1 chipset, and I still think it's like a pretty good performing chipset when it comes down to it. So that kind of covers it up there a little bit. Now moving on to basically to sum it up, I still think that Google Pixel 6 Pro is a very good phone to pick up. It's not a perfect phone by any means, but I do think, like I said before, Google did a pretty good job with this phone when they first came out hardware-wise, and I think the outside of this phone was very good. It was a very good performing phone on the outside, and I still think this thing still stands up very well from that perspective. I think if you're going to go ahead and buy a phone, this is a fairly decent option. And if you're, like I said, if you're going to go and buy it, please do. It's a very good performing phone. But I do think there's probably better options. I think the Pixel 7 Pro might be better, and I think the Pixel 8 Pro might be the better one for a majority of people. But I still think you can't really go wrong with this phone. It gets a thumbs up for me, and I would probably recommend a vast majority of people to buy it if you're in the market and looking for one. So that pretty much covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.